Hello to my human family, and I have on someone who is relatively new to the YouTube scene, has been doing Sticks and Stonehenge for a while, has been doing their own channel for a little bit. Alikai also did this wonderful takedown of the JK Rowling screed manifesto, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to call it an essay anymore.
It was a litany of excuses is what it was.
Pretty much. So, Alikai, say hello to the human family.
Hi, everyone. So, as Christine mentioned, I'm fairly new-ish to the YouTube space. I've been working with Sticks and Stonehenge since like August, September of last year. I also used to work on an atheist channel for a little while before that as a moderator and then a co-host, but that was a split that happened about a month ago, and I started my own channel, which is itself it's an allyship channel, but it's also a lefty polytheist channel that does a lot of social justice work. So if you guys are into that, then feel free to check me out. Like, I put stuff out every week. We have a weekly show, which next week on Monday, you're going to be on that show, aren't you, Christy?
I am going to be on that show, and I'm looking forward to it more than I was earlier this afternoon. So, uh, the, um,
Yeah, we found out we have a lot more in common than we thought we did.
yeah, pretty much. The we you know the deal. I talked to people for a little while beforehand, and Ali has just done the longest we talked beforehand ever. That so,
Well, I mean, we're both writers, and that means that we have a lot to talk about because it's very hard to shut a writer up once they've discovered that there's another writer in the room.
yes. Um, the one thing I really wanted to get to, and I didn't talk about in the beforehand, um, the trans space on YouTube is taken up primarily by atheism.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about it a heck of a lot. I have two videos up early on, but you are a polytheist, and have you had what kind of feedback have you had being polytheist in primarily atheist space?
Oh gods. It depends on which side of the community you're talking about. When my ex-co-host brought me on, there was a lot of pushback. I got a lot of hate mail, or rather, my ex-co-host got a lot of hate mail about me because they didn't like him having a polytheist in his space. I know that Surus, who's also a big prominent creator, atheist creator who partners up with polytheists, gets a lot of crap for having Ocean on. And we just did an interview with both of them on Xenia Bridge yesterday. We talked at length about even the crap that Jen has gotten for working with me on Xenia Bridge and for building bridges. Like, Jen has been called a traitor and other things by people that she used to work with. And I've actually gotten pushback from polytheists on Twitter and in other places for working with atheists, like on
Really?
various issues. Yeah, there's a lot of polytheists who, because of anti-theism and how nasty like atheists can be to us, really think that I'm absolutely crazy, and so is Ocean, for trying to build bridges with the atheist community. But the way that I see it, like, we're all in this together. Like, we're both religious minorities, and we get the same pushback from
Yeah.
the dominant Abrahamic religions. So, like, if you're, say, trying to fight for trans rights, or trying to fight for, like, abortion rights, or, even just equality in general of any kind, why
Yeah.
would you not build a coalition with the people who are most likely to support your cause? Like, it seems really fucking silly to me that we just sit in our opposite corners staring each other down and letting the answer to a single question divide us when we have so much to give each other.
I totally agree, and it's one of the things that's bothered me in the atheist community. I am I'm anti-theist in brain, but pro anybody who's an ally in practice. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Well, I
And
mean, anti-theism has a lot of definitions, which we talked about last night. Like, you can be anti all religion, or you could be anti-religious harm. Like, religions that don't
yes,
proselytize, you don't have to fight because, like, we're not trying to spread ourselves. People come to us usually.
I hate to quote Sam Harris. I really hate to quote Sam Harris, but I have no problem with Janes. If a Jane were to, a Jane is not going to blow up anything or yell at me because or hold up a sign saying that Jesus said this and that and the other, and hate me because I'm trans. So
Well, and I mean, most polytheists won't either. In fact, like we actually have a huge like cross section of the LGBT community as a whole because polytheist religions are so accepting.
yeah, and if anybody, I do not see how anybody can hate Ocean.
Yeah, Ocean's a boss. He's a very good friend. Like Ocean, he's an amazing content creator. And like again, if you guys want to go check out my channel, the interview that we did last night with Ocean Suris and I and Jen Aldrich, like first off, the first 10 minutes is a shit show because we were cracking jokes about each other and just being friends
Yeah,
because we all have that kind of dynamic. But like we got pretty deep into these conversations about the commonalities between polytheists and atheists and how ultimately we have so freaking much in common that the idea that one faction's going to hate the other over the answer to a question just boggles my mind. It really does.
well, we have 2 atheists and 2 Wiccans in this house, so there you go. It's
That's interesting.
yeah. I don't. I have my. I mean, I have my own problems with the Abrahamic religions, and I think Callan and I got into a bit of a scuffle over a particular interpretation of one line in the Elder Eddas, which which is not something you see on video.
To be fair, heathens will get into a fight over like particular lines in the Eddas. Like the heathens fight each other as much as they fight anybody else. Like Hellenists do the same thing. I get into fights with freaking Neoplatonists all the time because I'm just like, I don't understand y'all. I just don't.
Oh my god. Uh, yeah, my usual. I usually diffuse that kind of thing by just asking the question, who is Theseus shipping with? The worst joke I've ever written. Trust me.
Yeah, I believe it. So you said that there was a particular reason that you had ended up inviting me on, and partially because of the collab that we did. But you said that there was something in particular that you touched on in that collab that you kind of wanted to expand on.
Oh my god.
Dysphoria
Yeah.
and dysmorphia, I think.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you very, very, very much. Um, yeah. Just real quick, my one of the ways I hid being trans was not looking in the mirror
Mm-hmm.
for a good 18 to 19 years at all, ever. I learned to do my hair and everything not looking in the mirror, and I took off my glasses if I had to get a haircut at a place. Um, and I told myself I had body dysphoria because I was large, um, body dysmorphia, which was which is true, but not what I was hiding. And you have experience with both of these things, so yeah, I did want to talk about that. Thank you for reminding me. My brain is still not working.
Well, one of the things that I've been very open about with the community is that I do have an eating disorder. I'm a bulimic. I threw up when I was in college and a little bit in high school, but eventually that subsided into what's known as exercise purging,
Right.
which is basically where you try to exercise off all of the food that you eat, or you obsessively exercise when you get stressed out instead of binging or things like that. Like it becomes unhealthy. And like I was exercising upwards of 3 hours a day at some points, and like my partners got worried about me and were like, hey, you should probably go get your eating disorder looked at now that we've been dealing with your PTSD for so long. And like I figured out after a while when I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, Callan from Transgarter,
Right.
that it turned out that, yeah, I do have dysmorphia. I do have an eating disorder, But part of the source of that dysmorphia is the fact that I am gender fluid, and there are days that I really want to be more androgynous and days that I really love the fact that that I have a very feminine body, because I'm overweight. And apart from the fact that I've got quite a bit of a gut, I also have a ton of that fat distributed in all the places that people want it distributed in terms of femininity.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to talk cup sizes or anything, but I'll just say I've got back problems for a reason. And like between that and having very wide hips and everything else and a very narrow waist, like I've got that hourglass figure, but I'm still very heavy. There are days, my more extreme end femme days, I love that. And I love the wardrobe choices it lets me give. However, unfortunately, on the days where I'm a little more androgynous, where I want to be more, I guess, binary, less recognizable, I have a serious problem with that. And like that is part of where that dysmorphia stems from, because I feel like it's a lot harder to be androgynous in general or even appear that way when you are heavier, because fat distributes. Basically, we talked a little bit about this in the collab, but like we are a sexually dimorphic species to some degree, and a lot of that has to do with
Yeah.
hormones. And when you're heavier for either gender, like your fat distributes in certain places. And so unfortunately, being as heavy as I am, my fat distributes in very, very feminine places, and I have a problem with that on the days that I don't want it to look that way.
Well, my ex keeps reminding me that I have a guy gut, which I'd rather she didn't. Uh,
That's really mean.
uh,
I mean,
it's
I've been told that by my partners too, but like that's mean.
yeah, I know. I don't take it as mean. She really wants me to look gorgeous, and she gives me a lot of clothes that are wonderful for me, and I'm fine. And she does my makeup every now and again. Uh, so it's not like she's trying to be mean. She's just hitting on a place where I'm very, very sensitive about it.
I mean, that's just like, I don't know, maybe that's just my sensibilities being younger, but like that just comes off as a mean comment anyway. So I know she's probably not trying to be mean. It just comes off that way.
Yeah, and I don't take it as mean, but it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
The because I do have, yeah, okay. Once I realized that most of my problem was dysphoria, and I started taking care of that, the dysmorphia started, and I'm thankful for that thing over there because it hides my gut when I play.
Oh, you play electric guitar?
That's an Ibanez acoustic electric.
Oh, that's an acoustic electric. I've got a Schecter downstairs. It's not an acoustic electric. It's just a straight up electric, but it's got like Jägermeister patterns on it. I love it to death. My mother-in-law gave it to me. It was our wedding present.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just
We're
having.
back in the oh crap, we have way too much in common. Sorry guys, like there we could shift back to the topic. But like I just oh wow, we have even more in common. But there's actually statistics though about not just trans women, but like women who have, and this is kind of transitioning into another topic we talked about wanting to discuss, like women in general of
Yeah,
any sort, trans, cis, people who were born assigned female at birth, are more likely to develop eating disorders if they also have developmental disorders like ADHD, autism, etc.
yeah.
Something I read somewhere that like folks with ADHD are almost 40% more likely to end up with eating disorders, which is crazy.
Yeah, and autistic people have a larger percentage than the general population.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was saying. Like with ADHD, we also have a larger percentage, especially women with ADHD, because we get diagnosed so much later.
the yeah, well, I just got re-diagnosed with autism, Asperger's, what they used to call Asperger's, that area, um, which also is incredibly prevalent in the trans community, and nobody knows why, and people try and use it against us, which is annoying as fuck.
Yeah, both you and Transgarter touched on that in your segments. Transgarter went in depth with it, but they talked a lot about the idea of kind of exploring one's gender identity and, you know, being not as likely to feel as forced by societal norms and to conform to them. Like that was Shay's kind of proposal as to why a lot of autistic people are more likely to discover that they are transgender sooner.
Yeah, I mean, we're throwing stuff at the wall because I'm going to be working on with Shay on something about that, but
Well, it
the
was just something that Shay had mentioned in their portion, and I thought it was interesting.
yeah, and that's why but I wanted to get into it a little bit. I do think that a lot of the thing with the neurodivergence is the gender roles, and I think Shay hit it right on the head on that. Because I don't understand some things that society says is the thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I I just don't. I don't and people I had somebody get mad at me on Fluid Voice for not understanding borders. I don't understand country borders at all. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, they don't make sense to me either, but probably for a completely different reason. Like that's part of the reason that I'm as hard left as I am is because like the idea of a, you know, where you are born determining what your chances are going to be like in life just doesn't fucking make sense to me. Like it never has.
Oh, sure. I was born in Southampton, which right away gives you way too much information about me.
Yeah, I mean, me being born in Seattle like does too, but like I was born in Seattle, but then I spent the early part of my life in Britain, and then around 6, my mom got me back. I have a really fucking weird life history. I was raised across 3 different cultures, Haida, American, and British, and like I'm very much an amalgamate of the 3.
Well,
Um,
tell us a
but
bit about the Haida part, actually, which is stuff that I'm really not familiar with. So, I mean,
so I
I am to a point, but not huge.
I can't be registered with the tribe because my great grandfather pulled us off the rolls after his brother and sister were, for lack of a better way to put it, lynched over a land dispute. So because of that, there's a rule within the tribe that we can't register, even though like we're near full blood or at full blood, as far as I can tell on my mom's side. But I was raised, sorry for the background noise. I've got the window open because it's swelteringly hot, but you might hear motorcycle jerks coming in and out occasionally.
Yeah,
But,
thankfully my street's very quiet right now because I have the same.
but like on the Haida side, I grew up, after my mom got custody of me back, I used to go out onto Whidbey Island to stay with my aunt like
Right.
every summer. And my great aunt and my great grandma lived there too. And so I learned bits and pieces of Haida folklore and language and even some spirit walking stuff, for lack of a better way to put it. Walker between the worlds is what it translates to.
Sure.
Um, like eventually by the time I was like 9, I want to say, my mom put a stop to that. I got mocked in school really heavily for it, because I would like speak partly English, partly Haida sometimes, because you know that stuff gets jumbled in your brain when you become bilingual. I speak broken Haida now. It's very, very bad, but like back then it was a lot more natural for me. And so I learned bits and pieces of the culture before my great grandma killed herself and my great aunt died of cancer, that you know my grandma actually tried to hide. She, before she died, I was able to record some interviews with her where she talked about the shame of being biracial. Like they hid, because we're lighter skinned, we could pass if you didn't know what you were looking for. They hid who we were, and my mom completely tried to whitewash us to some extent. She very much she married a rich white guy and very much forced us to code switch and behave the way that his family wanted us to, and we spent far more time with his family than we did hers.
I
But I still treasure those summers.
I relate to that in too damn many ways. My first language was Spanish, for the record, um, and I'm the only one in my family who passes white.
Yeah, I barely do. Like if you're Canadian or you've ever been to a reservation here in Washington, I don't. But if you are from the Midwest, then you probably don't know what like Salish natives look like. So like, because the Haida people aren't necessarily Salish, but we're close enough that a lot of people count us as such.
Yeah.
Our language is actually a cultural isolate. There are sounds in it that don't exist in any other language, and they can't find any language that it's related to. It's also highly endangered. There's less than 10 native speakers left.
You have now intrigued me to actually research this, which is kind of, you want to know about my autism? There you go. As soon as I find something I know nothing about, I go, all right, dive.
ADHD does exactly the same thing, which brings us back to our prior conversation. I think that out-of-the-box thinking has a lot to do with neurodivergence, because there's also research that shows that a large percentage, like a not insubstantial percentage of artists and musicians and, you know, like of any kind, artists, writers, musicians, whatever the heck you want to call all of us, like group of the creative arts together, autism and ADHD is freaking everywhere. Like some of your like chances are at least one of every single person who's listening to this, one of your favorite artists, musicians, actors, etc., has one of those two conditions, if not both.
Yeah, the guy from REM definitely is autistic. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually joked about that before with my partners. I did not know, like, I didn't know if that was a known thing, but I said that he very much sounded that way.
Yeah. And one of the few ways I feel I can communicate properly is through music or writing. I don't
Same.
I don't always communicate. I don't always communicate well in person, and sometimes people say things and do things that I'm completely lost. So
Yeah, for me, I tend to either over or under communicate. I have a really hard time with group dynamics.
yeah.
And like knowing when is an appropriate time to speak and accidentally cutting people off because I can't hold on to thoughts for very long and stuff like that. Like I have issues with larger groups. One-on-one, it's usually a little bit better, but I have to be really careful not to accidentally dominate a conversation.
Oh God, that's the thing too. Oh, I have to stop talking now, but I had so much more to say.
Yeah, especially because I tend to know a lot about the things I'll pipe up about because of just what you were talking about, the research rabbit hole. Like I've got a video coming out on Thursday about, is Zeus a predator? And I ended up going deep into like scholarly research on to like in mythology, like I'm talking balls deep. And like, you know, I read over 30 papers. I cited 12.
Yeah.
Like the video, it's like 18 minutes long, but it's dense as heck. And I cite paper after paper after paper in it because I was just curious about like the cultural interpretations on a very specific thing. And like, I think that's another reason why I think like folks who are either on the spectrum or, you know, have, you know, ADHD, which the paper that Shay cited in our collab talked about that. They included us in their research because autism and ADHD, you're more likely to have ADHD if you have autism, but the reverse correlate isn't quite as strong, if that makes sense. Like there's a lot more people who have ADHD than have both.
Mostly they thought I was ADHD for a long time, and then but the fact that I didn't understand, I had to ask what's going on. When if somebody yells at me, I have no idea why.
Mm-hmm. But like the paper kind of talked a little bit about that correlate, and I think that it has a lot to do with creative and out of the box thinking. I think that because of the fact that we fall down those rabbit holes so easily, it's a lot easier for us to do that kind of self-exploration and come to those conclusions without a lot of the cultural baggage that comes with that.
Yeah, I think that it's mostly okay. We have our own language in its own way, and
We
it
were talking a bit
doesn't.
about that before the show, like how
Yeah,
ADHD and autism, we have, like, even if you just have ADHD like I do or have both, we speak and think very similarly. And so we can talk to each other. Like most of my friends have autism, like the vast majority of them, and it's weird. But like I realized you guys speak exactly the same way we do. You guys have that same chaining of thoughts. And so like you know, people say that people with autism have a hard time talking, but like, have you ever talked to somebody with autism and like followed the conversation about something they're interested in? Because it, like, fuck, man, like if you haven't, then you've obviously never seen somebody come into themselves. You know what I mean? Like Callan and Shay will light up and talk my ear off
Oh,
if I talk
yeah.
to them about anything that they love. And you know, you and I were doing that to each other earlier. Like
Yeah,
it just, you have to get somebody engaged.
it's a strange thing, and it will circle back. You just have to give it time.
Well, and but the thing is, what makes us special is that folks with ADHD and autism, we can follow each other's logic jumps if there's even the slightest hit in the conversation, whereas a lot of like allistic / neurotypical people have a really hard time doing that. They're like, wait, why are we talking about, like, you know, King George the Third? We were talking about gay rights. And it's like, oh, well, you see.
See? Yeah, it's very frustrating for other people, I have noticed, and I try not to go total. Well, they used to call it going geek, but I didn't like that. But I am a nerd. I am a geek. What the hell?
I mean, geek and nerd are like pride symbols nowadays. So wear it on your chest. Like get yourself a pin or a badge or whatever it is, like, or a hat.
And queer we've reclaimed, and I'm glad we reclaimed it. I've been, you know, I did the marching. We're here. We're queer. You get used to it. So
Since we're on that subject, we were talking a little bit about, and I don't know whether I should say the word that a lot of them like to use for themselves or not. But we were talking a little bit about the issue with a true scum problem within the binary trans community, both on YouTube and kind of at large, and like non-binary exclusion that's going on with a lot of
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
And the
We
word,
didn't get much into it, but that is something I want to touch on, because you are in the non-binary category by being gender fluid
mm-hmm.
or not. I don't.
Well, I count myself as in the non-binary category, being gender fluid, because
Yeah,
non-binary to me just encapsulates anything that isn't one of the binary genders. Like I know there are some people who think it has a more specific definition. I'm not one of them. Like I think NB basically just encapsulates every gender identity that is not, you know, man or woman, pretty
yeah.
much.
And
Um,
I'm boringly binary, and I'm boringly monogamous, and I don't think I fit in. I know I said that before.
but like there was a podcaster who recently had a notorious non-binary exclusionary YouTuber on, Rose of Dawn, and
Yeah,
I have some serious issues with her and with that interview overall, but I'm not going to call the person out. I'm not going to be like, oh, let's make this drama, because I'm not that kind of person. But I do have an issue with the stuff that Rose espouses on her channel, because I have a lot of problems with this idea that somehow my existence invalidates yours. And so I'm curious, first off, what your thoughts are on that. And second, what your thoughts are on group people like that who are trying to rename or reclaim what used to be a slur to distinguish themselves from non-binary folks or other folks that they think won't medically transition, because some non-binary folks do actually take, say, puberty blockers in order to, you
yeah,
know, be less binary. And so it's not as though there's not a medical component to our stuff too.
exactly. I mean, you've got, well, obviously, let's name the names. You've got Rosa Dawn, you got Miss London, you've got Blair White.
Blair White's the Blair White and Rosa Dawn are two of the worst of them, honestly. There was one other one that I brought up in the collab as well, because I did a name and shame with a bunch of different creators that were all identified as being true scum. I can pull it up in a second, but yeah, like a lot of them, I don't understand why they're so threatened by us. Like I don't understand why my identity bothers them so much. Like it's kind of like all the turfs that are like, oh, by the way, even binary trans people aren't real, huh? It's really it's crazy how close that seems to be.
I get you're a man in my inbox on the daily, so you know, fine.
Calvin Guerra, that's the other one.
Oh, Calvin. Oh, fuck Calvin. Oh my God. I've managed to avoid listening to Calvin except for a little bit for research, and it was like I don't want to be here. I want to go somewhere else now.
Yeah, but that was in my name and shame. Those were the four because they're the most known of them. I didn't want to give any exposure to smaller true scum creators because it's like you have some time. You're not like cemented in your beliefs yet. You can change.
Yeah, there is one reasonably small YouTuber who is trans and who did change his mind on it. And so I had mentioned his name on the the other show, and no one knew, and I got it wrong, so no one knew who I was talking about, which is good because he's changed his mind.
But I'm curious about like, and again, I don't know whether I should say the term that a lot of them are trying to reclaim because it was used as a slur for a long time. But a lot of those creators are trying to distinguish the umbrella trans, which includes non-binaries, from binary trans people who plan on medically transitioning up to and including things like surgery. And like, I'm curious what your opinion is on their attempts to reclaim that term to distinguish themselves from us, because I don't see any other utility for it apart from that. And that's the argument that a lot of them, especially Blair White, tend to use for reclaiming that term.
Well, yeah, I'll say transsexual, but there's a different word that ends in Y that they're trying to reclaim too, which
Yeah,
I
transsexual was the one that I was going to say if I was going to say anything. I've also seen them use the term transvestite to refer to folks who do not want to like get the surgery, even if they go through hormone therapy. Which really, like, if you ever wanted to see me like light everything in a room on fire, like, go ahead and try to make that argument to me. Like, we can do this all day, buddy.
I look. There's one easy way to expose Blair White's hypocrisy. Um, she's not getting the surgery. She made a video about it. She says she's not getting the surgery. Well, guess what? You're out of your own damn club.
Mm-hmm.
You're out of the club you started it. Sorry, I'm getting the surgery. It was supposed to get a couple months from now, but COVID. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually talked a little bit at the end of that video about the Trump administration and a lot of the stuff that they're trying to do right now, because people really celebrated the SCOTUS victory over with LGBT people being protected under, you know, like religious, sexual identity, etc.
Yeah.
Rights. However, one thing that a lot of people didn't note was that that's a ruling on that specific point. The ruling, the stuff the Trump administration is trying to do, it might get challenged in court. It might take a really long time for it to get up to the Supreme Court, but this ruling doesn't affect the stripping of medical rights that the Trump administration is attempting to do. So, like, one of the reasons why this stuff needs to matter is that trans people of any identification, non-binary, binary, trans, etc., you guys might get discriminated against, you know, and I'm saying you guys because, again, I passed, so I'm significantly less likely to be discriminated against than somebody who is, like, their doctor knows they're trans, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And like, it's not just hormones that you guys could potentially face. Like, you guys get crappier healthcare than anybody, you know, does, especially like people transitioning who are of color. And it's
Yeah.
awful. It's absolutely awful. And again, I'm not trying to separate the two of us in terms of those things, but again, I pass. Like, people don't know I'm gender fluid for the most part. It's not something that I'm even allowed to talk about all that often. But like, folks who are in the middle of transition, especially, are going to have a lot harder of a time if these protections get stripped.
Well, I pass once in a while, but my if you really want to hit it, I had to interrupt an interview I did last week because I got a phone call in the middle of it, um, telling me my doctor isn't going to see me anymore.
Oh, wow.
So
I'm
thankfully we
sorry if
have
I hit a sore spot there.
it's fine. We have a good gender clinic here. They're my primary. It was a secondary doctor, and I knew he was transphobic. And in the minute he got the clearance, he fiddled with my files so that my insurance wouldn't cover it anymore, and that they're dropping me. So
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of thing that I talked about at the end of that video was, people like you could end up with COVID and not be able to get testing because a transphobic doctor doesn't want to see you.
Yeah,
Like people are like, oh, well, trans people are going to have a hard time with hormones, but trans people, that's not the only health care that people need. Like,
yeah.
people are people. You could get the flu or break your leg and get crappy treatment at a hospital.
I remember. Well, I mean, I learned this early because I developed pneumonia about 3 months after I came out, so I wasn't even close to passing. I wasn't this gorgeous flower that you see above in front of you. They wouldn't let me shave.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Why?
I don't know. Uh,
That's so abusive. I'm so sorry that happened.
no, it's. I sort of just take it in and use it as fuel.
I mean, it doesn't mean that it doesn't fucking suck. It doesn't mean that that's not the only societally prescriptive way that I can express sympathy. Like, it's
No,
I mean, like, I have a lot of sympathy for that. Like, I can't have empathy because, apart from the little wisp of a mustache I get because my ovaries like to randomly release bursts of testosterone, I've got polycystic ovarian syndrome. They randomly just malfunction, and I'll grow a bunch of body hair for no reason for a little while, and then it goes away. It's annoying, but it happens.
Yeah.
Like, apart from that, then, like, I've never had to deal with something like that. Like, my biggest issue is that I can't really do much with the fact that I am gender fluid because people don't understand what gender fluidity is. So because of that, I can't be like, oh, well, please call me they, them, and then please call me, she later. And like, people will understand the reason for that. It's not normalized at all. We're kind of like the periphery of the periphery as far as, gender identity is concerned.
Well, you're the second gender fluid person I've had in the last 3 interviews, so there
That's
you go.
exciting. But I mean, it doesn't mean that we're well known. Like, it
No.
doesn't mean that anybody understands what the hell is going on with us. We don't even understand what the hell is going on with us. All right. We're just as confused as you guys are. So, at least there's that.
Oh yeah. I any any alternate identity, and one of the problems, and we did touch on this in the collab, but I want to go really deeper into it, is accusing neurodivergent people of being tricked, which is
Ugh.
which
The incompetence argument. It's so, like, honestly, I like the whole it's an agenda thing and the frustration jokes and stuff that you had there. I first off, I laughed my ass off. But second, I felt you at the end when you said this line pisses me off more than anything else in this whole, horrible article,
yeah,
because I've been told my entire life that I can't know who I am. And I can tell you that once I get out of high school, once I got out of high school, people were still telling me that. And like, that hit
yeah,
home for me too, because people have tried to tell me that because I've got pretty severe ADHD. They're like, oh, well, how you can't possibly have that because you're an author and you're published and you're this, that, and the other. And now you're a YouTuber and you can get stuff done. You can focus. No. And I've also been told that I can't possibly, like, that Callan convinced me that I was gender fluid or something. I'm like, no, Callan gave me words to express something that I was struggling with for my entire life.
yeah. When I was, I mean, I knew when I was 9. At 11, Renee Richards was big in the news, and I had a word for it, although not the same word we use now. That became the slur, um, and it was good because I knew who I was, and I've known who I was from long ago. I and to say that that's not a part of what makes up my brain is to invalidate my brain in general.
Well, there's also this strong message that even, and I hate this terminology, but I don't know if there's another way to express it. So tell me if there is.
Okay.
Even, quote unquote, higher functioning people who have jobs, people who function within society, TM, On the spectrum. I hate this terminology. It's so freaking condescending. I hate it. I hate it. It's the medical terminology as far as I know, and I don't know how else to express it. But even folks who
Okay.
can make decisions for themselves and function within society, who are fully cognizant of their entire world, which even people who can't communicate that well within the autism spectrum often are, and people don't seem to know that.
Yeah.
Like, people who are completely functional within society still are told, well, you have this diagnosis, so that makes you less than human. And it's dehumanizing. It really is. So if there's a better way to
Sure.
express what I just tried to say, like, please tell me, because I don't know if there's any other way to say it. Like, I don't know if there's a different way.
There, for some, this is also an age different problem, because the way autism was looked at is one of the reasons Asperger's was kind of chopped off of it,
Mm-hmm.
because we're now considered high function, and I hate that term so much.
Well, I mean, like I said, I expressed as much disdain as I did for it, because it is so fucking dehumanizing. Because, like, where's the line between high and low functioning? Huh? What does that mean? What does function mean in this context? And I get that medical professionals are not trying to be dehumanizing, but the lay idiot public loves to take those things and run with them and do horrible, horrible things, like what we saw dear old Rowling do in this fucking article.
Yeah, and it really did piss me off more than anything else. It was there was a hashtag that was going on for a few days after that was trending, which is "I know who I am," which was all trans people with autism just shouting out, "No, no, you can't do this to us. You are not allowed to do this to us." It's like, I don't like the idea, or the even the back of the head stuff of being thought of as a freak.
Yeah.
Uh, and I use that word advisedly. I, uh, and
Well, you start to internalize it to a certain degree, right?
yeah,
Like, you get treated that way long enough, you start to think of yourself that way, and you abuse yourself when there's no one around to abuse you.
yeah, I had someone who was very close to me who made me feel that one day, and it was so not intentional on her part. So I'm not gonna blame her. I wrote a song about it, of course, but I'm not gonna blame her
Hey,
for
art is the
that.
greatest refuge for neurodivergent people when we're in pain. Like, it can
Yeah,
say things that we can't.
yeah, and it is. And like I don't know if I said it on the stream, but yeah, music and writing is the only way I can express myself on certain things.
I'm the same way. Like, I am significantly less musically inclined now because of an injury I received from my stepfather when I was younger. It damaged my vocal cords and completely screwed up my singing range. But I do write still, and I particularly write short fiction, novels, and poetry. There's a poem that I'll probably share with you when we get off of the recording,
Okay.
that I wrote recently, that the sort of care that I took in that language is the kind of care that I wish that I could take when I speak. Because you and I suffer from completely different issues when it comes to speech, but one of them that we share is going on and getting too excited about something and annoying people because you just slam them with info. And that's the other part of it, is how could you possibly think that a large group of people, like folks with autism and ADHD, who have these expansive minds where we get completely obsessed with random things and just dive down the rabbit hole and get as deep into those research as we possibly can, like, to the point where it's like, I ain't got no more inches left, and yet I still need to keep going. Like,
Yes.
I'm sorry, innuendo jokes, you can take that stuff out if you want to, but like, I have a
No.
dirty mind, and that's my humor, and I'm sorry, like, except I'm not. Um,
No. I, I trust me. I appreciate it.
but like, do you see what I mean? There is, how can a group of people who does that routinely who probably thinks more deeply on these things, on anything that interests us, than
Yeah.
neurotypical people could ever aspire to, because hyperfocus is a motherfucking superpower. It's also maddening because it's the flip side of executive dysfunction, but hyperfocus is a fucking superpower. And if you think that a group of people who can do more research in a shorter amount of time and go deeper than most neurotypical people could possibly imagine won't thoroughly investigate something before coming to that conclusion, like, I get that we all deal with impulsivity, but seriously, when you're talking about identity here, like, what the hell are you smoking, and who the hell do you think you're defending?
Well, even
because
that,
I think you're defending yourself at that point, Rowling. Like, go fuck yourself. Just saying.
well, even that, the part I did, it took 8 takes, and even on the 8th take, I was double checking different sources to make sure I wasn't saying anything that was wrong. And that is a problem, though, because I want to be perfect in my research, and there's so much research to be had.
And there's no such thing as perfect, but we all get that perfectionist streak because we all get judged from the moment that we're born for being who we are. So, like, everything is wrong all the time.
Yeah.
That social anxiety runs deep, man.
Oh God. You, without getting into it, I understand that we were raised very similarly.
Yeah, like that. It's not even just your upbringing. Like, fucking teachers do that shit. I had a biology teacher one time that, like, I was reading a book because I had read the chapter the day before, and they were just basically parroting it. There was nothing deeper going in. And they, like, I was reading a book in class, and the person called on me and was like, "What did I just say?" And I repeated their words verbatim, and they had to leave me the fuck alone. I had a math teacher who stopped putting the homework up on the board at the beginning of class because I would do it during class because I had a chaotic home, instead of listening to the lecture or taking notes, because I understood stuff from having read it, because that's the kind of obsessive person I was. If I was interested in something, I would learn everything there was to learn about it that I had access to, and I'd only pay attention in class if there was something more being taught. Like, I'd perk up and pay attention if they added something that the chapter didn't talk about.
Well, thankfully in high school, I had one teacher who also seemed to be neurodivergent and was taught that way, and I was like, "Oh, I get you completely. Let's go on this."
And, like, honestly, my favorite teachers are the ones that would expand on the material. And honestly, that's part of the reason why literature and English classes were so interesting to me, because we would read the book and then we'd actually talk about it. I feel like I was learning things in class because we were discussing something beyond just the words that were on the page, versus something like math or science, where most science teachers are just like, "Here's me explaining the chapter you were supposed to have read last night, and I hope you got your problems in." And I don't, like, I know that there are science teachers who go beyond that, and I've had a few of them, and they changed my life and got me obsessed with STEM. But, like, coming back to kind of what we were talking about, because of the way that we tend to learn, we don't tend to do well in those sorts of things where you're supposed to just sit there and stare off into space while the freaking teacher parrots stuff back. And we also aren't the sort, like, when you're staring off into space, TM, or doing whatever it is you're distracting, we're probably thinking about something we're obsessed with, which, if you've got a problem like dysphoria, again, what the hell makes these people think we haven't given this all of the thought? Not just some of the thought, but all of it.
All of the thought. I spent, I would. This is well known, so it's not. I'll shorten it. Like it's possible for me to shorten
just
anything
assume
I
that
say.
Approximately all of them.
I was actually out in high school, briefly, from junior and part of senior year.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the collab. You said that they told you that that was not an okay thing to be, and that you couldn't possibly be that.
Yeah, and then the AIDS thing hit, and I went so far back in the closet that I found Narnia. That's a good line. I'm gonna have to remember that.
So you weren't just in the closet, you were in the smallest closet you could possibly jam yourself in. Like, this is like a tiny little wardrobe. Like, I stuffed myself into a drawer and then fell into Narnia.
Yeah, and as they say, if Harry Potter taught us anything, was that no one should live in a closet.
Yeah, and that, like, nobody should live in a drawer either. And that's the thing, is they want to put us into these neat little categories. Like, people want to just look at you and know, quote, who and what you are. But we're finding more and more, with more and more research, with more and more time, with more and more listening to people, that that's not possible. Like, my culture growing up had gender identities outside of that I was taught about, at least. Like, I never got to meet people who were these things, but I was taught about them because my great grandma remembered time when she was on the island. Like, we had gender identities that don't quite correspond to trans women and trans men. Like, two spirits were their own thing. And depending on which culture you're talking about that have identifications of them, some of them were, say, femme presenting at home, but still masculine presenting in culture. And some of them had an entirely different identity. And, if a two spirit identified as a woman fully through culture, guess what? A marriage to them was considered heterosexual. Like, it wasn't considered a gay marriage. They were women as
Yeah.
far as anyone was concerned. So this idea of questioning who the fuck somebody is, like, I have one bit to confess, and that was, because of trauma that I had, there was a very brief time in college where I became a TERF. And it had to do with the fact that I had trauma from an ex-friend who did bad things to me in school. And I was afraid that other people would have something like that happen to them. But this person, as it was pointed out to me by later a trans friend who was far more patient than she ever should have been, this person didn't identify as a woman. This person dragged me into, like, this compromising position by force. And that transgression was not a reason for me. And I wasn't even a full-blown TERF. I was like, once you start to get treatment and stuff, then you should be recognized. Like, I was one of the, quote, reasonable TERFs. But
Those are the most difficult, because they have a limited amount. I call them gender crit on easy mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like, that's where I was like, oh well, if you're getting hormones and you're planning on getting the surgery and you should be counted as a woman. But before that, like, I was that kind of asshole. And I don't like confessing to that, but I have to, because in part it shows that you can change when you have those kinds of asshole attitudes. And what really, like, got me was, number one, getting to know my trans friend after she came out, and number two, like, the very basic logic of, well, most of the time, 90% of the time, 99.9% of the time, those predators identify, not, they're like, it's not related to them being trans in any way. Like, those predators are not going to pretend to be trans. Like, there's too much social cost for them for maybe one opportunistic thing. And when it was put to me that way, it made a lot of sense. But when you're scared, it doesn't.
That's the one thing that never made sense to me. Why would anybody go through all the bother? I mean, it is a lot of bother, and there is a lot of things that you have to, and it's like,
well, and there's one example that people on the right especially like to trot out, and you and I both know who it is.
Yes, we do.
But like, I posed this to a friend of mine on the left when he was doing a stream on this, and I said, but isn't that just toxic masculinity to try to question somebody's identity because of predatory behavior? Like, at that point, we're equating being a predator with being masculine, versus you can accept that person's gender identity and still flag them as a predator. You have female predators. They exist. Woman predators exist. So that person can be a woman and still be a predator, and that's still okay. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that. It's not okay to be a predator, but it's okay to acknowledge that a woman can be a predator.
I was young and I ran into one, so trust me.
But you understand what I mean. There is like that's the only example I can think of a trans predator, honestly. Like, it's not like there's some exhaustive list. It's the reason why everybody has to bring that person up.
Yeah, and there's the one in Britain in the prison, and that's about it. And and it's like, okay, you have two. There are millions of us, uh, and if we count the non-binary. uh, some people don't count. Some people still in the that aren't TERFs still don't count the non-binary as trans, and a lot of non-binary don't count themselves as trans. I never asked you if you do.
I do, but it's something that I feel very uncomfortable saying a lot of the time because a lot of people don't, like you said, like thankfully my trans friends include me. I don't have any true scum among my friends at all, and several of my trans friends are themselves either fluid or non-binary.
Yeah.
So like they've helped a lot with me kind of coming into that identity more. But I have a really hard time speaking on trans issues because of kind of like what we were talking about earlier with my skin color being lighter and people not recognizing me as Native American for it. Because I'm physically so femme and don't make a big deal about pronouns all the time, people tend to say that I don't have as big of an issue, the oppression Olympics stuff, which I hate when people say, oh, the oppression Olympics when they're talking about, intersectional issues. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is the competition that can happen within in-groups where some people are like, well, you don't deal with the same struggles as me, so you don't get to talk about this issue at all.
Um, I would never do that to you. Is that all right?
That's fine. That's fine to say. It's something though. It's part of the reason I was so reluctant initially, and we talked about this in the before part about
Yeah.
like to do the like JK Rowling thing. When it turned into a massive mega collab, I got a lot more confident, which is why I gave that very specific thank you at the end. But like before that, as somebody who is gender fluid and just coming into that identity, like it was very hard for me to feel that I could speak on trans issues because we are so excluded from that space. We are the periphery of the periphery, and a lot of true scums in particular really like to target us. Like that's why I brought up Rosa Dawn earlier, because she fucking loves to shit on gender fluid people. And it's like, why do you care? Why are you so afraid that you won't be accepted as quote unquote one of the good ones, that you're going to hurt other people who are struggling just as much as you? It's something like, it makes me both sad for her, but it also makes me angry.
I think because I didn't understand it at first. Although, like I said, I accept people for what they say they are, and that's never been an issue. And for the record, when you said you were TERF for a little while, I had an Ayn Rand phase right after I went back in the closet. So don't tell anyone.
I think you just told your whole base, which and part of mine, because you know that a bunch of my fan base is going to be coming and hanging out here. I'm gonna push this shit, like I will.
Thank you.
Look, if you're building a channel about allyship and you don't like show the hell out of your friends, then what the hell are you doing with your life? Just saying.
That's true, and I'm glad I met you through Callan. I know that, but I don't remember how I met you. But we
met through Twitter primarily. We interacted a ton on Twitter and somehow managed to never follow each other. And
yes.
like that's how we ended up starting talking. Was you were like, hey, like I keep interacting with you and I'm not followed and I don't know why. And I'm like, yeah, we should totally chat sometime. I saw your interview. And then we started DMing, and next thing you know, you're in a mega collab.
There you go. And I'm in another one next week, but only voice. Oh well.
Congrats. Hey, collabs are how you grow on YouTube. Like, take it as somebody who's been around for a month and now has over 200 subs.
Which is better than I'm doing right now.
Hey, let's hope we can get you a few more. Like, I hope that we can get you a few more. You have a really amazing message.
I don't like sub begging. I feel very self-conscious about it.
Everybody is a freaking whore. Like, we are all just like, we're out there. Our bodies and voices are for hire. Your brain is, the brain's the biggest sexual organ on the planet. Just embrace your role. Just do it. You're selling yourself, and that's just the way it is.
I don't know how to respond to that.
You're speechless. I did my job. And the fact that you're laughing tells me that I did my job right.
I was on YouTube before this channel. I actually have another channel that's still active, but I have an old channel which I never tell anybody what its name is, and that one did very well, but it was me being a new atheist, which uh,
Uh,
and I had a long battle with someone who's now known as Natalie. Uh, unfortunately, unfortunately, a dead name I can't forget. And so it's just uh, I sub begged over there, and I did the whole 9 yards, and I didn't like it. So
well, how about this? I'll sub big for you. Hey guys, if you're hanging out here from my community or anything adjacent to it, or if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so that I can ask for that, since Christy won't, because Christy deserves it and y'all should love her. There you go. I did it for you.
oh God. Thank you. I usually I call it the YouTube prayer at the end, and that's and I never get it quite right. So because I hate doing it so much.
Well, there you go. Like I did it for you. You don't have to get all awkward this time. I did it for you, and now you've already had your awkward moment, and we can get past it together, okay?
Okay. This
I'm sorry if my humor is too crude.
no, you're you want to hear the worst joke I ever wrote, or
Oh God.
my favorite joke I ever wrote?
I was about to say the word. I thought you told your worst joke earlier, but maybe I'm wrong.
Actually, there's more to that joke that I left out. Trust me.
Oh God.
No, the favorite joke I ever wrote was zombie Hitler ate his wife because he liked both brains and brawn.
Ooh. Oof. That's a big oof there. Just like put a graphic of oof like right over my face for that.
So yes, crude humor is not alien to me.
Well, snark is 90% of my brand. I think the rest of it is some people think I'm smart and they're all special, but that's beside the point.
Well, you still have a little ways to go before you get the Jen Richards snark.
I mean, like, to be fair, like my co-host on Xenia Bridge spits fire like way harder than I do. Like I start to snark and Jen's just like, oh, you want to go now, huh? Like everything is now on fire. I'm sitting here going, I don't know whether I should put it out or not. Like, just welcome to my life. But I love Jen too. If y'all get a chance, go check out the Atheist Wind Down if you somehow haven't heard from it, because Jen is a brilliant ally, and her bit at the end of the video was incredibly inspiring. And we've actually gotten some very nice comments from a few trans people who said that they felt validated by it. So like, she's somebody that if you want to have another amazing interview, Jen is somebody who you'd love to have on.
We have been trying to schedule an interview for 6 months now, because she was on Fluid Voice, and I was like, I have to do an interview with her. I have to do it, and we have just not connected yet, which is unfortunate.
Well, I will put in a word for you, because like Jen and I talk literally every day, so I'm gonna be like, hey, you need to get on that, because we now have an allyship with this channel.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Absolutely. I've been wanting to, and yes. Since we keep going back to the JK Rowling thing, which link will be into the description, of course, because this was a collab that I was so proud to be in. And
you said you're going to be putting up the raw footage for that on your side too, because I cut some of your jokes out, and I cut some of the pauses and other things, and there's a couple of comments that I cut out too. So you said you wanted your full stuff to be up there.
Well, weirdly, like I said, my avatar is now from that video. Part you cut out.
Hey, there's no shame in being a mix, okay? There's no shame in it at all.
But well, I think after all of us were trying to be, humorous but academic, and then Jen is coming in going,
this entire room and the house and the freaking, like, the house and the room and the yard and maybe the entire neighborhood by the time I'm done, it's all gonna be on fire. That was Jen. And I loved it, and it was such a perfect ending. So, well, it was Jen and then Aaron. Aaron also had like, and Aaron was technically the ending of it, but like Jen like put her foot down. And like Aaron's bit about PTSD though, I think needs to get more recognition, because I think a lot of people did end at Jen. And Aaron's bit where they talked about like the PTSD thing, and okay, it's obvious you have trauma, but that doesn't give you an excuse to be a TERF, and please stop looking for the pity points. Like, it was really, really powerful, and I think folks do need to recognize that ending bit. And when I get all those freaking timestamps in there 400 views later, like, if you missed that part, go back and watch it. It's really, really good.
The my brain has switch them. If Aaron was on last, it's not registering in my brain. And I thought, okay, we've got a slope going, great. Oh, and Jen, but yeah,
Aaron was last. Jen basically talked about the whole allyship call, and then Aaron talked about the PTSD and the bit at the end where Rowling was like, so, like, I'm totally not actually asking for pity points, but, like, can you pity me anyway?
Yeah, I found that gross. I feel bad for her that she got assaulted. I really do. I've been assaulted. It's not fun.
Well, and I said the same thing, but, like, that doesn't give you an excuse to be a fucking TERF.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't an excuse for me either, and it took a tiny bit of logic from one freaking trans friend, which is why I have a really hard time believing that without a sheer level of dedication that she was able to hold on to that. But we were wrapping up, and we're going off on a tangent again.
Yes, I was trying to wrap up. I forgot about that. Shit. We're
professionals, I promise.
God, I know what I'm doing. I really do, but some days it's not happening. We are speaking in our language for those people who don't understand it.
This happened in the interview with like Cirrus and Ocean and Jen and I, because there were 3 people in the room who had ADHD, and like Cirrus was used to interacting with all of us. So like it was organized chaos, and it was glorious.
Yes, this was kind of disorganized. I noticed you started interviewing me at one point, so that's cool too.
Well, I mean, I asked a couple of questions just because that I'm used to doing that a lot. Like, I don't get invited places as often as I end up inviting people places. So we talked about that at the beginning too. So I wanted to get your perspective on something because of the fact that I'd never heard your perspective on that thing. And we were talking about that topic. So I didn't know like whether or not me going off on a whole big long, F this reclamation was acceptable. So my apologies. We are trying to wrap up. I'm going to shut my face now.
You are welcome to not shut your face at any point. But I do have to do the YouTube prayer, which is, if you like what you see, please hit like. Hit this. Allie already told you to sub, so listen to Allie. Don't listen to me. Sub.
Or listen to both of us because we're both valid.
We're both valid. Yes, we are. Comment really helps with the algorithm. The algorithm hates transgender people as it is, but comments tell people that you're engaging. So,
if y'all want to tell me my voice sounds like an American little boy, go ahead and do that. If you actually want to engage with the content, I'm going to be watching the comments section.
Good, because I miss them sometimes, which is unfortunate. Yes, please comment. I try to look at all the comments, and I sometimes miss them, but we'll come back to you maybe a month later and say, hey, thank you. Or GFY, but
Take a long walk off a short pier.
Exactly. What else is there? The comment, subscribe.
Go play in traffic to your haters. I think we've covered it.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'll use my ending benediction after the prayer, which is your voice matters, your life matters, and you matter. And Allie matters very much to me now. We haven't known each other long. We're fast friends already. It doesn't matter.
Well, my tagline is "We're stronger together," so it fits.
It fits. We are stronger together. So, thank you so much, Allie. I guess we have to say bye now to the folks out there. Oh, no.
Thank you for inviting me. So there's my goodbyes. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for working with me. And I look forward to a long and rambly friendship.
Yes, pretty much. Okay, let me stop recording before everything starts again because we're going to start again if we don't. All right. Stopping recording now. Bye, everybody.